Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Southwest Center for Human Relations Studies at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. My name is Dedrick Perkins. I am delighted to welcome you and to be your host this afternoon. Our hope is that we continue the conference tradition of working to improve racial, ethnic, and intercultural relations on college campuses and community organizations by providing the space for virtual learning and with opportunities like this one. For those of you joining us for the first time, NCORE has monthly webinars on the first and last Wednesday of each month. Some of the webinars are free and others are offered at a modest fee of $25. Our next webinar is Developing a Critical Theory of Love, a framework for educating for social justice, which will be facilitated by Dr. Durrell Brooks. It will be presented on February 1st, so please visit our website for the full list of webinars for the season. So before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you need to utilize the closed captioning, make sure your settings are set to on. Always remain muted unless you have been requested to unmute. We ask that your background has no moving images or flashing lights. Our presenters will be utilizing breakout rooms. Our presenters will be using videos and music, so please be aware that the sound levels for the videos may be different from the regular presentation. If you have any specific technical, accessibility, or other operational concerns, please send those via direct message to me, the session host. Now help me welcome today's presenters, Danielle Espinoza, Monica Anna, and Joey Ann Mateo.
Hello, and welcome to Identity, Lived Experience, and Growth, Navigating Higher Ed as a First-Gen Professional. This presentation will be an interactive one where we encourage you to share thoughts and comments in the chat, ask questions in the Q&A option, and share aloud using the raise hand feature. We would like to begin today with a land acknowledgement and ask that you take a moment to privately acknowledge the land on which you find yourselves on today. The land on which we inhabit is physically situated in the original ancestral homelands of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We pay respect to the Gabrielino Tongva peoples, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout the historical diaspora. Without them, we would not have access to this gathering and to this dialogue. We take this opportunity to thank and honor the original caretakers of the land. We'd also like to give everyone a chance to share their pronouns for us to be able to see in the chat. So we invite all webinar participants to either temporarily add their pronouns to their Zoom display name in the lower left-hand corner of your video box by right-clicking on your video box, selecting rename, add your personal pronouns, and click OK. If you would like to permanently change your display name, then you can go to your settings, click edit to the right of your profile photo and your name, add your personal pronouns from there, and also click OK. Good afternoon again, and thank you for joining us today, everyone. We are very pleased to be in your company this afternoon as we begin our presentation, share more of who we are, and ultimately get to know you more as well. My name is Danielle Espinoza. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I serve as an assistant resident director in the Residential Life Department at the University of California, Los Angeles, also known as UCLA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Hanna. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the assistant director in residential life at UCLA. And I also am a co-founder of Met Lemonade Consulting, where we do trainings and coaching for professionals and first-gen professionals as well. So it's nice to meet you all and to see you here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joey Ann Mateo. I also go by Jam, which are my initials. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I was previously employed as an assistant resident director at UCLA like Danielle, but I have since transitioned since the conference in May to working at Skydance Animation Studios as a talent development coordinator. So very excited to chat with all of you. So, as Danielle said at the beginning, much of our session will encourage participation in the chat, and we will also have opportunities for you all to reply out loud and unmute yourselves and share answers. So we want to spark dialogue and for us to sort of warm up and get to sort of know each other with a very low stakes, easy question. So this first one is, what's your glow? And you might be like, what's a glow? Well, that is something that when you talk about it, you literally glow. You light up, you can talk about it for hours. It makes you happy. And we are all going to share our glow and then invite you to also share yours. So my glow is K-pop and anime. I love K-pop and anime. I can talk about it for hours. Back at UCLA, I had everyone I worked with pick their favorite person in the group and their favorite song. It was something I could talk about for hours and was an experience for me to bond with other people. So those are my glow.
Thank you, Jam. This is always a really fun question to answer. I have multiple glows. I love books, whether it's reading a book, just holding and looking at a book, going book hunting. Anytime that I get to spend outdoors as well is always a very happy, guaranteed happy time for me. But if you know me closely, Jam and Monica already know this. My biggest glow, hands down, is my Chihuahua Hazel, who is sitting right beside me right now, supporting me through all this. She is my pride and joy. She's only about 5 pounds, and I love to bring her anywhere and everywhere that I can. So if you happen to see yourself, or if you happen to find yourself at UCLA and you see someone with a small Chihuahua, it's likely me. So I'm also very happy to see a lot of folks answering with their beloved pets in the chat as well.
Yeah, so great to see and read everybody put their glows on here. And for me, there's 3 things that make me the happiest. The first one is food. The way to my heart is definitely through my stomach, and I can spend all day giving you the best restaurant recommendations. So I'm the person that people reach out to when they first move to LA to figure out where they want to eat. I got a spot for you. And the second thing is travel, but really that's about culture for me. And so I'll share a little bit more about my story later, but for me, traveling is really about experiencing other cultures and also being able to participate in my own culture, which is outside of here. So thank you all for sharing in the chat.
Yes, I love reading everyone's glows. I see there's a lot of other K-pop and anime fans, which I love. But yeah, I would also love to encourage you all to share out loud. So if anyone would like to share their glow in front of everybody, just raise your hand and we can unmute you. And when you're unmuted, please share your name, your pronoun, and where you're zooming in from. If you would like to speak, you won't be able to turn your video on, but you'll be able to unmute. So if you would like to share out loud, just raise your hand. Stephanie?
Hi, Stephanie Traversy from Watertown, South Dakota. And I have many glows, but I guess the top 3 would be music, family, and my pup Stevie.
That's awesome. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing. Anyone else? Beth?
Hello. My favorite thing, anime as well. Love anime. Demon Slayer is probably my favorite, Nezuko. And my dog, Yue Frenchie, she's a blue merle. She is my everything.
Yeah, I love Demon Slayer, Beth. Thank you for sharing. I can get maybe 1 or 2 more if anyone else would like. I see the chat's going off. Okay, Jesus.
Can you guys hear me? Yes. So my name is Jesus. I'm coming from Fort Worth, representing Texas Christian University. And my glow, I have several, but my top 3 is I like talking about astronomy, Star Wars, and the MCU, which is the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. So it's really nice being part of this session.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then our last one, Latoya.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Okay.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name is Latoya Dunye. Pronouns are she, her. I am from Arlington, Texas, coming from the University of Texas at Arlington. And some of my glows, which people have amazing glows, crafting, K-dramas, love the MCU and Star Wars as well, and connecting with others.
Awesome, thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for sharing. There'll be a lot more opportunities throughout this session if you weren't able to share right now. And so again, thank you for sharing your glow. And I really love all the participation in the chat. Please keep that up throughout this session as we get a little bit deeper into the questions. And speaking of getting deeper, our next question is, who are we? So during the last question, when we talked about our glow, we had an opportunity to sort of share who we are on a very surface level. We shared our names, our pronouns, a bit of our interests and where we're from, what we do, all very surface level initial meeting information about each other. But there's so much more to us than just our glow and our names and what we do. And understanding and sharing our own individual stories often really give insight to how we navigate different spaces. Our backgrounds and experiences are important in understanding how we navigate higher education and our role as professionals. So our past really informs our present in a way. So in the beginning, the three of us shared a very surface level introduction as to who we are. We told you what we do, but not who we are. And we are a lot more than just what we do. So we want to take this time to share with you who we really are. So this is a photo of my family and I, and a big way I want to sort of share who I am is through an I am poem. So I will share that with you right now. I am from a home in California and a home thousands of miles away in Manila, Philippines. I am from a family of immigrants who poured their heart and soul to give their family a better life. I am from artists who persevered in a career many of their family and peers saw them as foolish for pursuing. I'm an older sister, raised on the values of always being there and looking out for her. I'm a first-generation American college student, figuring out higher education all on my own. I'm from a 9-year-old girl being told her mom has breast cancer, and an 18-year-old woman who had to help hold the family together when she passed. I am the little pink daughter in a short created by my dad in honor of my mom. I am from big parties filled with laughter and with enough food to feed 4 times the amount of people there. I am Joey and Mateo, or Jam. So my family immigrated from the Philippines before I was born, and I often didn't feel American enough or Filipina enough in the spaces I occupied. My parents would tell me stories about a country I barely knew about and felt very detached from, but also very close to. I pursued college alone. In a way, I navigated it without the sort of experiences that I could lean on from my parents. And I also decided to pursue a STEM major, and both my parents are artists. So I felt kind of like, wow, I'm navigating college by myself in a way, and also a field that I can't even lean on them with help for. And so that was a lot. And when I was 9, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer and she passed away right before I started UCLA. And so I honored her with a sort of short film working with my dad, and we released that. So that was very nice. But I'm very family oriented and very excited to sort of help professionals and share my experience and story with others and hopefully help them through anything they're going through. And yeah, so that's a bit more about who I am, a lot more than sort of my initial introduction, I would say. And I'm going to pass it on to Monica.
Thank you, Jam. And thank you for sharing your story, and for all of our participants for sharing love in the chat for Jam sharing her story. So I will tell you a little bit about who I am. I am from 2 cities that never sleep, Cairo and New York City. I'm from 2 worlds that feel like home and always missing a part of myself an ocean away. I'm from immigrating to America and my classmates asking if I had lived in a pyramid. I am from a line of strong women who sacrificed everything for their family. I'm from being told never rely on anyone, you need to be independent, but also you're always doing things on your own. I'm from loud family gatherings and laughing so hard that it hurts. I'm from overflowing dinner tables because food is how we show love. And I am from ancient civilization with rich history flowing through my DNA. So as my poem kind of just shared, I'm an Egyptian American immigrant woman. I immigrated to the US a year after 9/11, and a lot of that has shaped who I am. Today, I can stand here and tell you and be proud of this identity that I have, but it took many years to get here. And when we first moved to America, I really struggled a lot with that identity, and I experienced a lot of shame for who I was. I'm the first person in my family to attend college in the United States, and I had no idea what I was doing and how to navigate the system. And it really wasn't until I attended a Jesuit university, Fordham, where I began to make sense of some of these experiences that I was having prior as part of my immigration story and my experience. I've also spent some time working with the refugee community through the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and that's a big part of who I am and my identity is service, as well as giving back to the immigrant and refugee community. And all of these aspects of my narrative and my story make me someone who is committed to creating spaces of connection and understanding, and to build capacity to create seats at the table for women of color in leadership and in higher education. So all of these things make me who I am. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you so much, Monica, and thank you so much, Jam, again, both of you, for sharing your very touching I Am poems. I will go ahead and share mine now with all of you, so thank you in advance for that space. So let me get started. I am from a glitzy yet barren desert landscape. I am from 120-degree days and bountiful starry nights. I am from parents who wrote the definition of hard work and siblings whose favorite tears shared were from laughter. I am from women misunderstood and told too soon they couldn't dance. I am from being told you're bigger than this place and I want you to have more than what I did. I am from spontaneous day-long drives and competing to stay up until the crack of dawn. I am from being too distracted by delicious homemade food to learn how to cook it. I am from valleys in my bones, desert in my heart, sun in my soul, and stars in my eyes. I am Danielle Espinoza. So if we haven't been able to pick up from some of the descriptors in that one, I am from a desert. I'm from Palm Springs, California, hot and sunny Palm Springs, California. And I very proudly hail from a working class family who have only ever demonstrated what hard work and tough yet tender love means. I was raised primarily by my tenacious mother, who has always simultaneously held multiple roles, including her most recent role as a college student that I will be touching upon shortly. A devoted stepfather who worked 12-hour-plus days, and a creative, soft-hearted father who oftentimes when I was growing up was homeless. So as a result of often unstable foundations within my family, I experienced a myriad of adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, as many of us in the educational community are coming to learn more and more about. And so I unfortunately did experience a lot of setbacks growing up, impairment upon my social skills, my at times very rocky educational trajectory. So just trying to find that perfect educational setting during my adolescence that would allow me to thrive. It ended up of all types of settings looking like a continuation high school, but I wouldn't change a thing because it has absolutely brought me to where I am today, to my current professional career, and of course the relationships that I hold so dearly close to my heart. But those experiences also very much shaped the way that I see the world, and ultimately my desire to help others and to create the connections that I'm very excited to continue creating with all of you today. So thank you again, everyone, for listening to our I Am poems. But we don't want to make it just about ourselves as well. So now the three of us have had the chance to share more of who we are, we would love to know more about who you are as well. So we now invite you to take the chance to create your very own I Am poem using the activity guide that we'll be providing to you through the link in the chat. You can use a notebook, you can use your phone, maybe a computer document, anything that is really just convenient for you to create your very own I am poem. We're going to go ahead and give everyone about 6 minutes or so to go ahead and create that for themselves, and we will go ahead and reconnect in just a moment.
All right, we hope you had enough time to at least write a few sentences of your poem. And for now, we'll actually ask you if you can type one sentence or one line from your poem into the chat. And then we'd love to ask for a few people to share their poem if they're interested, maybe 1 or 2 people. And so if you're interested in sharing what you wrote, you can raise your hand and we'll allow you to unmute. Okay. I think I see one hand raised. And if you can introduce yourself first and then share your poem.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Majiza Sanchez Guzman. I use she, her, AF pronouns. I love this activity, so thank you so much for sharing with us, and I loved your poems. I am a daughter of immigrants. My mother is from Barbados. My father is from Jamaica, also with roots, having roots in Central America and Panama. I am a native New Yorker, born and raised in Queens. I am first generation, first in my family born in the United States, first to go to college and first to hold a terminal degree. I am a hard worker, but learning to lean into softness and ease. I am a wife, mother, boss, and mentor. I am one who suffers deeply from wanderlust and yearns to travel to every continent before I die.
Thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate your story and appreciate that you love this activity just as much as we do. Christina? If you can introduce yourself and then read your poem.
Hi, my name is Christina Bustos. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am tuning in from Orange County this afternoon, and I wanted to share my poem. I actually wrote one of these in grad school, so I was able to pull it up and edit as I see fit now. So I'll begin. I am a first-generation student, still continuing to navigate higher education after graduation. I am a daughter from a family that includes women who wanted me to go farther because they themselves couldn't. I am an artist using theater to connect with those around me and to learn more about what it means to be more human. I am a Chicana, finding my identity within a country that is generations away from me, all while within a country I have always called my home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for sharing. And let's have Miriam share.
Hi, my name is Miriam Kamsia. I'm from Houston, Texas, University of Houston, Clear Lake. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And my poem is as follows. I'm a daughter of Mexican immigrant parents who have less than a grade school education. I'm the eldest of 4 siblings, whom all have a university degree. I am the daughter-in-law of immigrant parents who made me their daughter and invited me to visit their homeland, the Holy Land. I am a widow. I am a mother of 1 beautiful teen son. I am a graduate student and a full-time professional. I am a woman with small dreams who later realized I had big dreams to conquer.
Miriam, thank you so much for sharing. And I think we'll have Quinn share. And I just like to thank all of you, especially those of you in the chat, but especially those who are coming off mute to share their stories for your vulnerability, because this takes a lot of courage to do that. So it's a privilege to hear your stories and to be able to share your experiences. So I think we had one more hand raised. Okay, Liliana, let's have Liliana share.
Hello.
Hi, Liliana.
Hi. So I didn't quite get finished with my poem, but I got started. If I can share.
Yes, if you can introduce yourself first.
Sure. My name is Liliana Martinez Kaufman, and I live in Los Angeles. I'm one of my first is that I'm attending UCLA in a doctoral program, and I'm really happy to be here.
Sure. Great to have you here.
I am the product of when the mountains meet the desert. I'm an heiress of sweet potatoes, squash, beans, and corn. I am from a long line of women who braid ribbons in their hair. I am a still lake and a flash flood. I am 45 years old and finally comfortable in my own skin.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for everybody who's shared in the chat as well. There is power to these stories, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that is what you have. It's your narrative, and thank you for being here with us and for your vulnerability and your continued vulnerability as we go through this presentation.
All right, so moving forward, we're going to begin talking about the experiences of first-gen professionals. Now, I think definitions are very important, and so who are first-generation professionals? And I believe words have a lot of power, so I really want to read what we have on this slide out loud to all of you. First-generation professionals are trailblazers. They're one of the first in their immediate families to enter the professional work environment. They are professionals with varying socioeconomic backgrounds, life experiences, skills, and talents that diversify our workforce, and when leveraged, they help agencies optimally serve our diverse public.
So some of the experiences of first-gen professionals include maybe feeling these imposter feelings, right? Or what is commonly known today as imposter syndrome, but the researchers actually coined the term as a phenomenon. And the reason is because it's so widely experienced, it is not a syndrome, which is more of a diagnosable condition. It is actually a phenomenon because it's an experience that's more than 70% of the population do feel this way. So the imposter phenomenon, or what we sometimes call IP, is a concept that describes individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. So these are folks who are usually high achieving. These are folks who work really hard, who have a really strong work ethic, and are usually very good at what they do, but have an inability to internalize that success or their accomplishments. And so if you've ever said any of these statements, I was just lucky, it's not a big deal. I was in the right place at the right time, whether it's when you were accepted to something, whether it was when you succeeded in an experience, an opportunity, whether it was you getting a degree. If you've ever said any of these statements, it probably was related to those imposter feelings that you were experiencing. If you ever said, they'll find me out, I'm not that smart, I don't belong here. If you've ever been in a space in your job or in school or in any space that you occupy and you feel like I am not supposed to be in this space, and these are thoughts that you're having, these are common imposter experiences. And first-gen professionals are actually navigating professional spaces for the first time. They have not had somebody in their family teach them how to do that. They didn't grow up in an environment where this was common and normalized. And therefore, these feelings of self-doubt and fear of not belonging is persistent. And these imposter feelings may be experienced every day by first-gen professionals in their workplace related to their identities and not feeling like they belong in that space. Obviously, there are systemic issues that influence how we experience this, right? If you are a woman of color in leadership and there's not that many women in leadership, or let alone women of color in leadership, there's a big issue, underlying issue here that leads us to have some of these feelings. But also this is something to think about as a first generation professional of how do you go occupy spaces when you have these feelings or thoughts, or if you have somebody on your team, if you're not yourself a first-gen professional, but you work with someone who is, how might you work through that with them and mentor them and support them as they go about their lives and their experiences. And I apologize, I forgot to show the other two slides.
No worries at all. Thank you so much, Monica. So next we're going to touch upon another important aspect that's inherent to actually inherent to being a first-gen professional, and that is the concept of capital. So the concept of capital basically explains the economics of exchange, where human activity is directed to what we know as this constant struggle for position, which depends very heavily on how much we can accumulate and how much we can convert or spend using different types of capital, which we have listed here. So cultural, symbolic, social, and economic. These all work as a means to both maximize our economic and social profits. So a more simplified way of thinking about capital can be thought of not just as objects, but even those familiar aspects that we encounter regularly, such as attributes and knowledge, attitudes and behaviors, beliefs and values held, what one possesses, and even the quality of a person. And from there, these all are expressed, and they are then transmitted as a means of either social, educational, or professional achievement, or all three. It is, of course, very important to note that capital is not equally available to all, as some are hidden, some are not as easily identifiable, some are scarce. And ultimately, capital in its nature is exclusionary because it's the very mechanism by which social stratification or social classification is maintained under the guise of meritocracy. So the first capital that we are going to be reviewing together is cultural capital, which takes on many forms. It's the knowledge that we have that is valued, but it's not always or necessarily taught to us. And it also includes attitudes, values, and beliefs that we hold, as well as the languages that we speak. So these are then expressed, used, and again, converted or spent into valuable resources that get passed on as generational advantages. So we can think of cultural capital as being transferred intergenerationally, and it ultimately is a socially determined capital because it works as a means of gauging what we consider success and what we consider valuable. So for example, cultural capital, and at times the lack thereof for me, has looked like being Latina, coming from a heavily interdependent family, and being a first-gen student and professional. So when it came to my education and my profession, I had to learn the ropes myself when it came to graduating from high school, navigating through community college and struggling with that, transferring and eventually graduating from UCLA and beginning my professional career here, all while receiving this constant push without the necessary means, or as my dear family likes to put it, just figure it out and do it, which I'm sure many of us are used to hearing. But on the plus side, it does, as I mentioned, it does work intergenerationally, and I'm very proud to share this. It has worked generationally for me and my mother, who is actually part of this webinar today. Attending, I should say, who I helped enroll in community college and is now a very proud transfer student herself at the University of California, San Diego. So that is cultural capital. And next we'll review symbolic capital, which is often recognized as social class or status differences. It can take on the form of displaying markers such as one's way that they speak across different environments. So the way we speak at work versus the way that we speak at home or with our friends and family when we go out. It can look like the different titles that we hold. It can also be what we wear, and it can be the mannerisms that we use. And all of these are used to gain the upper hand in a social interaction or a setting. So for those of us in the context of the workforce and higher ed, symbolic capital can also look like the varying degrees that we've attained and the multitude of roles that we've held, which we know all too well and are very familiar with in higher ed. And these all contribute to the symbolic sense of those differences amongst us with different backgrounds, especially when you start to take into account where one went to school and what degree they got their master's in and so on and so forth. So as another example of that, for me, symbolic capital is most salient when it comes to my education, because both my academic and professional statuses have varied greatly given what I've shared, of course, previously about my educational trajectory. And even now working at UCLA, I'm a full-time professional here, but my previous job before this was as a full-time nanny. So two, symbolically speaking, very different roles. And even as an undergraduate student transferring into UCLA, I was immediately aware of the status differences between myself and my peers. They were 4.0 honors achieving, awards earning students. So I had to push myself to overcompensate and get to that point where I felt that my social status aligned with them. And it's something that I have reaped the benefits of because it's sort of directed my work ethic to this very day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing those two. I will be covering our last two, which is social capital. So social capital is really connected to networking and relationship building. Networking, I think, is the biggest part of social capital. So many first-generation professionals were also first-generation college students. And research has shown that first-generation students were less likely than their peers or those from upper socioeconomic status backgrounds to attend office hours, reach out to assistance from professors or their TAs, and reach out for outside resources. And so networking has really become such an important part of professional work. It connects us with people from different backgrounds and spaces, and is a big way in how we grow personally and professionally. Creating those professional and personal networks can help individuals find new job opportunities, learn new skills, and eventually further their career. And so networking helps us find roles, and many find positions from the networks they build. Many undergraduate students find internships or future roles after graduating from the networking and social relationships they've built throughout undergrad. And so an example of this for me, both of my parents immigrated from the Philippines, so I had a very large social circle. So my social capital in terms of friends and family were very large, but my professional networks and social capital in terms of my professional development were not as big, I would say. So I had to figure that out all on my own and figure out how to network professionally, how to build sort of my skills to further my career and make me a stronger candidate when I applied to jobs. My first big networking experience was actually during undergrad at UCLA. I was previously employed as Danielle's position as an assistant resident director, and I found that out through the connections I made as a student. I became very close to my RA, and she connected me with other possible people to give me skills and advice to become later an RA. And so I became an RA, and through that experience, I connected with a lot of different departments within residential life, and they gave me tips and advice, and I built those connections, which helped me figure out that I did want to become an assistant resident director and what the skills I needed were to get to that place. So I really depended on the networks I had built to achieve sort of my professional goal of becoming a professional in residential life. So that's social capital. And the final one is economic. So I think economic capital is the most straightforward in terms of the four capital. It's really about socioeconomic status. And one of the biggest things to consider in economic capital is disposable income. Individuals with higher socioeconomic status have funds that can be poured into things that aren't seen as basic necessities, hence disposable. And research has shown that many first-generation professionals lack much of the resources that middle and upper socioeconomic status individuals have available to them. So for example, touching back to disposable income, a lot of undergraduate students would love to get into extracurriculars and clubs and possibly unpaid internships, but may not have the economic capital to get into those things. And some cannot afford to take those unpaid internships. And in these roles, you develop many skills that you can put ahead that can help you be ahead in the game when applying to jobs and help your professional development. Another thing with economic capital is pouring funds into potential professional development classes, travel opportunities, and attending conferences such as this one. And it helps you build your network as well as your professional skills. You can learn from others from different communities and different cultures. So one of the things I've experienced with economic capital is very much tied to NCORE. I've never been to a conference at this large of a scale before because I didn't really have the disposable income to go to a conference and travel there. But I was helped out at UCLA. They provide funds that help us to build our professional development. And I was able to attend NCORE and afford to travel there because of the support from UCLA. And it really redirected my life, I think. NCORE was such a big point in my professional development. Back in May, I was able to network and meet other people and learn from different backgrounds. And I'm here today because of that and really being able to share my experience with you and learn from everyone. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Jam. So now I would love to invite everyone to share in the chat, or of course, raise your hand if you'd like to vocally share out. What are some of the different cultural, symbolic, social, and or economic capitals that you have experienced for yourself? I will go ahead and include that question in the chat as well. And as we start to have some folks answer, please also feel free to raise your hand or ask questions if any clarity is needed about that. But I will take this time to just summarize capitals in our particular context. So in our American context, when we navigate educational institutions and workplaces, we are converting capitals. Another example could be considered what one accomplishes in school to then move on to a particular university, into the undergraduate, graduate, and professional schools that we attend, which of course are converted into the job opportunities that we seek. But it's so important to keep in mind that often the selection criteria that we face, that we're accustomed to seeing and often feel unqualified to meet, are the very ones that go unchallenged because we don't know of or give enough understanding to the histories, the consequences, or the power behind these very real life aspects of values like merit and equality of opportunity when it comes to a capital as a first-gen professional. Thank you, folks, for your comments. I'm just taking a moment to read them. I know that these are a little bit lengthier in answers, but Lindsay, that's a really great point. I experienced that myself. You don't really correlate the two, but it does follow you really wherever you go, even beyond your higher ed education. So thank you for pointing that out. And you are certainly not alone when it comes to that experience and that realization. Thank you, Casey. I like that you noted professional in quotes because there is professional, but we also have to consider accessibility. You know, what does it mean to dress professionally if that resource is not something that is taught and provided to us at any stage of the professional game? Michelle, thank you so much. Couldn't agree more. Education means freedom. Education is knowledge that no one else can take from you. And it's your own self-power that you're able to exert, not necessarily on others, but in the life that you live. So thank you for sharing that. It's not, as we've discussed a bit and understand a little bit more when it comes to capital, it doesn't look the same for everyone, but our end goal very much looks the same. So being able to understand the different, again, trajectories and journeys that we have to take to get to these spaces is vital to understanding our identities as first-gen professionals. All right. Thank you so much. I don't want to discourage folks from continuing to answer because I know this is a little bit of a thinker. It's a self-reflection question for sure. But I do want to go ahead and take this time to move on to our next slide. So thank you so much, Monica.
Of course, and yes, keep the comments coming into the chat as we also discuss what other impacts that first-gen professionals might be navigating in their day-to-day lives and their work lives. And so some of those things include racial and ethnic identity, immigration status, your location and geography. I saw a comment earlier about the California travel, I believe it's UC, but it might be just the entire state of California, the travel to certain states, the ban, and the location and geography and how that impacts the politics of the place that you live, which might impact you based off the identities that you hold as well. Individual versus collective cultures, support from peers and from supervisors. And this is not an exhaustive list by any means, so feel free to add other things that impact first generation professionals as they navigate their day-to-day professional and work lives, whether it's in higher education or outside of higher ed. But an example of here that I'll give from my personal experiences is that aspect of my ethnic identity and my immigration, my identity as an immigrant, of not really finding that in the spaces that I'm in my work life. And for many years when I was succeeding and as I started as a young professional, as I was able to grow in the field, I often doubted myself, and I had extreme and continue to still have imposter feelings around these identities, because I don't see women that look like me. I don't see women who have the identities that I hold in the spaces that I'm in. I'm often the only one, if not one of a very small handful of folks on a university campus who identifies as a Middle Eastern woman, as a MENA woman. And as I've shared with you, for me, that was a big, a difficult part of my identity that I experienced a lot of shame for growing up. And to finally find a space where I maybe find one person or even just attending NCORE and the MENA SWANA group that was formed this past year was really important for me, because I hadn't found my people in this field. And so being able to navigate this with your identities, you're the only one that's going to experience things in your office, in your workplace, the way that you do. And depending on the investment that your colleagues may have or your supervisor may have in learning about you and learning about your culture and learning about your perspective, for some, they may have that space. You may have a work organization or culture that allows you to be yourself openly and honestly and authentically, and you can show up the way that you are. But for some, you may not have that. And that could be really, really difficult as you navigate, especially everything that's happening in the world around us, right, every day. And we all carry that into all aspects of our lives. So I'm seeing some folks post things here in the chat, and I big shout out to the MENA SWANA group that's blowing up the chat. So thank you for your support. I'd like to hear from you. If you are a first gen professional yourself, how have you experienced being a first gen professional in your life? How has that showed up for you? How have your identities impacted and the way that you've navigated those spaces? And if you're not a first gen professional, but you might have worked with someone who is, or supervised someone who has experienced this, how have you seen that impact them? So would love to hear, if you're able to post it in the chat or come off mute, from a few people, if you can share your stories. And again, thank you for your openness and vulnerability as you spend this time with us. Feel free to raise hand if you'd like to come off mute. And I'm seeing here, Miriam says, as a first gen professional, I find myself in a position to be able to pay it forward and provide coaching and professional development to my undergrad and grad student interns, many of which are first gen. So awesome. I love seeing that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that more in the solutions. And so I see 2 hands raised here. So Marianne, would you like to introduce yourself first and share?
Hi, my name is Miriam Luis. My pronouns nosotros, nosotros, coming from UC Santa Cruz. I apologize, my camera is broken on my laptop, so I'm unable to come on camera. Okay. But I did want to share something. We always talk about first gen, right? But within the context of the United States. And sometimes when I talk with students, I also like to share with them that we're not the first ones who are educated. We come from rich histories of families. And my personal story, like there's a lot of educated folks, you know, doctors in Mexico, in Tecolula de Matamoros, where I'm from. So it's also bringing that perspective in to uplift our students. I think sometimes we get so colonized with the language that we need to first decolonize the language and decolonize the outreach that we do with our students also.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that perspective that you bring. Thank you. And I see Marita. If you can introduce yourself and feel free to share.
Yes, thank you, Monica. Yes, so Marita Abram, Associate Professor at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio, pronouns she, her, hers. I am so excited to be here. This conversation, I just have to say, is like a breath of fresh air. I am a biologist. I am a woman of color and the only person of color in my department. I am one of 3 women of color in my division. That being said, you know, I've experienced this firsthand, and I am a first-gen professional. And when I started my career 12 years ago in higher ed, I dealt with imposter syndrome. I questioned, you know, if I was in the right space or not. But something that helped me to navigate that space was to be honest with my feelings, but also really lean on mentors, right? Sometimes people don't know that you're going through these challenges if you don't ask for help, right? So sometimes it's just all about saying, hey, I'm struggling in this area, and what advice can you share? And as I share with my students today and my mentees, oftentimes your mentors are not going to look like you just because, you know, the person may not identify as the same race or ethnic background as you. Doesn't mean that, you know, they can't mentor you and give you advice. And one of my supervisors actually became my mentor, right? And me disclosing the challenges that I had, the questions I had, you know, about professional etiquette in this space, am I doing this right? Really helped her to become just like a more aware and inclusive supervisor. So you got to trust people. And you also have to trust yourself and remind yourself you do deserve to be in that space. We must be in that space. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that your story and your experiences resonates a lot with what I'm seeing come through in the chat here of that importance of paying it forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about that mentorship piece and our solutions, but how that really is the key to ending this cycle, right? That is the key of showing that this is possible. And you shared something that I think resonates so much with me, which is that we sometimes have to be the first ones. We have to be the first ones in our spaces to create that seat at the table. And it's a huge burden to put on. And you don't have to do it every day if you don't want to. But the days that you can carry that burden just a little bit, it makes a huge difference for all the generations that will come after. And I know there are, for me personally, there are a lot of women of color who do not have the same identities that I have, that I look up to every single day, and have helped me become the person I am today, because I have looked to them for that mentorship piece and for that connection, and to teach me how to do things that I didn't have access to, that I didn't have the capital to access, and to overcome some of these feelings of imposter phenomenon, or the significant barriers that I experienced just because I didn't have the knowledge and the capital to navigate things like negotiating, right? And so thank you so much for sharing your experiences in the chat, as well as coming off mute. We really appreciate that. And so we want to take it into, what are some of these solutions? And we started getting into it, and you all have, the key thing is actually like, you carry the solutions, right? But we will share some with you as well. So talking about those imposter feelings and going back to that, really it's remembering that even the experts, the folks that you look to as the ones who figured it out, are the ones that are also still trying to figure it out. And we actually all learned this really during the pandemic, when, you know, one day it was like masks are bad, Then the next day it was like, no, everyone needs to wear a mask. You know, everything changed because the experts, the ones that we look to tell us what to do, they were also trying to figure it out. And so that's a really key piece to remember, the folks that we look to as the ones who have made it. You know, Michelle Obama talks in her book about the imposter feelings that she had throughout her life. And to me, that's someone that, like, she's made it, right? She's good. But no, Maya Angelou talks about it. Jennifer Lopez talks about it. There's a lot of different folks who are openly talking about these feelings, folks that in their industries we may see as experts, but they're also trying to figure it out. The second thing is that taking the risk to change the narrative piece. Last week, Columbia University announced that they will be having their first female president, and she's actually an Egyptian immigrant woman. And I was actually last night watching all the videos about her, because to me, that is an example of possibility. I don't know if I want to become a university president someday, but it's really thinking about that is a possibility, right? That could be something that someone that looks like you, that someone that has these identities that you have, could be in a position to lead and to guide and we know that folks who have these identities, right, are going to be the ones who are going to be taking into consideration all those folks that we don't see represented every single day. The second thing is really remembering to be brave versus perfect. Oftentimes, the way we are taught is, especially for first-gen folks, we have an idea of feeling like we need to be perfect. We have to do it right. We can't fail. Failure is not an option. I know for immigrant communities, we feel that immigrant bargain of, my parents gave up everything for me, for my siblings, for me to have these opportunities. So I can't let them down. I can't fail. I have to get the best job. I have to make the most money because everyone's looking to me to end whatever cycle it is that we came from. And sometimes that creates ideas of perfectionism, which are not necessarily helpful. And so you may not apply for a job, and research shows that women only apply for jobs when they meet 100% of qualifications, and men apply for jobs when they only meet 30% of the listed qualifications. So women are not getting those leadership positions and those jobs, not because they're not qualified, it's because they're not even trying, because they have this idea of feeling like they need to be perfect and they need to hit all the points instead of being brave and going for something that they may not necessarily go for. Another piece is your successes and your failures don't define you. You are not the things that are on your resume. You will be remembered, hopefully, by your character, by the impact that you've had, and by the conversations that you've had, the family that you have, your chosen family, all the things in your life and the people that you have touched. You are not a mere checklist of successes or failures. That is not who you are. So remembering to not define yourself with these things, and that sometimes helps to let go of some of these imposter feelings. And then also at the end of the day, remembering there's a reason it's you. You are in the space that you are in. You are here today for a reason. We are here talking to you today for a reason. And it could only be you. You have to be yourself. I think oftentimes we have mentors and people that we look up to. And as first-gen professionals, we might try to emulate everything that they do because we aspire to be like them. But the reality is you have to figure out how to do that in your own way. And you have to figure out how to do that in a way that actually speaks to your strengths. So there's a reason it's you, and you have to do it your way, not the way somebody else would do it.
Thank you so much, Monica. In that case, I will go ahead and present in my way. I feel very inspired. So we're going to go ahead and move on to intentionality as a solution. So the biggest takeaway from this, I would love for everyone to remember that intentionality is a proactive, not a reactive solution. And it must exist on all levels, from micro to macro. There is a starting point for all change, and depending on your identity, your circumstances, and of course your workplace, the level at which it begins is going to look different. So begin to consider the ways that you can start to affect change in the role that you currently hold or in the roles that you hope to hold. Asking timely questions. Some questions to ask yourself as a first-gen professional in any workspace include, what is the nature and the behavior of this organization, this institution, this workplace, etc., before accepting a role, as well as asking yourself, what is the culture of the workplace? Understand what and where you are getting yourself into. Comfort versus discomfort. As you consider it for yourself and for your professional development, don't be afraid to ask, am I going to do things that I'm comfortable with, or am I actually pushing myself to grow in certain areas? You can ask, am I even seeking to grow my leadership skills right now? Another question that is fair to ask is, am I putting myself in situations where I'm facing and confronting the imposter feelings, or am I simply taking a risk because I feel I don't belong? And understand the difference between the two. You can also ask yourself, or am I not taking a risk at all because I feel like I'm afraid of failing, which is something that we all experience at one point or another as first-gen professionals. Compatibility. So when applying for jobs and deliberating decisions, when accepting a position, make sure you are asking the right questions. Well, I feel like I'm being supported here at this organization. Is my first gen identity even valued here? How important is that to the others who are working here? And what are other professional development opportunities for me to be able to grow in this space? Another question that I am very confident to answer myself is my supervisor on board with mentoring me, coaching me, committing to my growth and allowing me to grow in this role in new ways? And most importantly, are they in the workplace willing to do for me what I am willing to do for them? These are so important to remember during the interview process. And additionally, keeping in mind that during that process that you are interviewing them just as much, if not more so, as they are interviewing you. It has to feel like a good fit on both sides. Speaking of interviews, there may be times, if we haven't encountered them already, when we're going to be on the other side of the desk interviewing applicants. So prioritize evaluating their characters just as much of their qualifications and how those tie into the role that you are hiring for, you're hiring for, instead of how they tie the role into who they are. So make sure they're putting themselves first. Focus on those identities that are salient to them, the populations that they express they want to serve, and just as importantly, the goals that they want to accomplish to understand and determine more of their character. It's more important to know who they are rather than what they've just done. And keep in mind that a successful candidate, whether you are interviewing or whether you are going to be the successful candidate soon, is someone who is able to express the natural fit a role is for themselves. And finally, please do keep in mind the obstacles that you and I and everyone here has faced along the way, how they continue to be navigated, and how we can continue being mindful of those on our side who may be experiencing obstacles of their own. The predominant culture in white-collar workplaces is, as we all know, defined by middle and upper class values. So there exists this bias in terms of hiring and advancement, which can work against applicants, many of us who are from low SES backgrounds. And to conclude intentionality and also give one final nod to cultural capital, remember, in the context of cultural capital for yourself, for our peers, and for our interviewees, it's not a predictor of academic or professional achievement. It's a mechanism where those in a position, whether it's us or others, use it to evaluate and judge purposely and reward dominant groups. And as a result, we exclude those non-dominant groups, again, many of which we belong to, and the knowledge that we inherently have. And as first-gen professionals, we want to actively, intentionally unravel these unfair fabrics.
Thank you, Danielle. So moving on to mentorship, coaching, and allyship. I know a lot of people put in the chat how important mentorship is in their experience as a first-gen professional, and so we're going to touch a bit on that. So orientations to workplace culture. Each workplace has their own unique workplace culture, and it's very important to have orientations to help new employees and first-generation professionals really transition into their role. There should be both new and returning employees attending these orientations to ensure that there's a possibility for change from year to year and to improve. This prevents outdated orientations and the ability to adapt to new sets of generations coming into the workplace. So your workplace culture should constantly adapt to those coming into those spaces and to learn from their years previous. And as well in these orientations, we should really promote a culture where you can make change, no matter the role you're stepping into, that you have the power to vocalize how you feel and the changes you want to make in your workplace. So really encouraging those orientations that everyone can make changes on a micro one-on-one level and a macro level for the whole institution. So networking skills, promote networking within the workplace. One great way is to promote collaboration within different departments in your workplace. At UCLA within ResLife, they encourage us to collaborate with on-campus partners, with professors, different academic clubs, so that we can build networking and really build from skills in different departments than just residential life. Career advancement training, giving your employees opportunities to take career advancement skills and increase their skills, to go to conferences and to go to different opportunities where they can learn from their peers and other people and bring those skills back to the workplace and teach other people what they've learned and share that information. So it's really important to support career advancement training outside the work and within the work. And then supervisor training, leadership. One of the important things within a leadership role is to keep this in mind. Are you recognizing that the dominant culture is not the way everyone in the room perceives certain situations? So touching back to our I am poems and sharing about who we really are, everyone comes into spaces with their own history, their own story, and their own background. And our past really informs how we perceive situations, how we approach things. And one situation may have a different impact on someone else than it impacts you. And so recognizing that is extremely important as a supervisor. And it really informs how you care for those you're supervising. Another important thing as a leader is to create affinity groups and spaces for the people you supervise. Is there a first gen affinity group in your work? Is there a place where other first gen professionals can speak on their experiences in the workplace and their history and come together? I can speak on back at UCLA, Monica was actually my supervisor. She empowered me to speak up on what I believed in and also encouraged me as a first gen professional. And I would not be presenting here today to you all if it wasn't for her. So thank you, Monica. A little touch on great supervisors. And the last part is community building and sort of a coaching piece. Once you have figured it out, or, we're always learning, so you can't always 100% figure it out. But once you have most of the pieces, what is your obligation now? Once you've picked up sort of tips and tricks on how to navigate professional spaces, what's your obligation to the community is to share that information, to support others, create those allyship spaces, and really share your experiences. Kind of like today, we all have been learning from each other's experiences. Monica, Danielle, and I have shared ours, but you have all shared so much with us as well. And, I think we're all taking from what everyone has shared today. So it's really important that once you have these pieces, to share them out and to share that out with new other fresh-gen professionals and really think about what were some of the things I wish I knew when I first started, and share those pieces to those who are just starting out.
Thank you, Jam, for sharing that. And the last big thing that we want to share with you is the importance of sharing the narrative and normalizing this experience. And ultimately, while those other steps may take a lot more thought and work to put into to change the culture of your organization, and you may or may not be in a position to be able to make these changes, what you can do is share your narrative, share your story. And I think that's why it's so great to see so many of you sharing your experiences in the chat, because I know for many, you may be the only one who's feeling this way and you're not comfortable necessarily to talk about it at work, or you don't have the community or the network of people who understand that. And so you can start by being that person in your organization. In the same way, the reality is with these imposter feelings, most people are feeling them, but no one's talking about it. And that's why you feel like you're the only one. And so the big thing is really to normalize the experience. And as a leader, to be able to share that, not just with students, but also with your colleagues, and share your story. Allow yourself to own your narrative. It feels like sometimes there's a big elephant in the room of I'm the only one. And the way to kind of combat that is really through showing up authentically and being able to be comfortable to be your whole authentic self and share your story and your experiences with others. So you can start now, and many of you are already doing that by mentoring students and other professionals. If you know, it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? If you've been able to reap from the benefits of mentorship through other first gen folks or through other mentors who may or may not have similar identities to you, go ahead and pass that forward. Figure out in what way you are going to contribute to the community. And so we want to provide you a little bit of time as we close our session today to reflect on some kind of action plan. And we'll go ahead and post the, if you jumped on late, here's the link to download the workbook, which has on the second page an action plan that you can fill out. So we're going to have you take about 5 or 6 minutes to make a commitment. And the reality is these are things that need to be small, because if you go with really big goals, you may not succeed. So what is the first step that you're going to take in this next week to do something, whether it's for yourself or for other first gen folks in your organization and where you are and in your network and in your community? What is something that you're going to do? And so fill out as many as you'd like in this action plan, but ultimately, and if you want to dream big, absolutely go ahead and dream big on this sheet, but we're going to ask you at the end to take one thing that you're going to do in this next week. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to reflect on that, and we'll come back and share. All right, I hope you are able to write a few things down. So I'd like to encourage you now to post either one thing in the chat that you're going to commit to doing this week, or if you'd like, feel free to raise your hand to come off mute. And if you have any questions, go ahead and also put those in the Q&A box so that we can make sure that we answer those. And in case you have to hop off, I know we're getting close to time. We also do want to share our contact information. I was reading a little bit through the chat, but I haven't gotten a chance to read through everything. So I look forward to kind of reading through that later. But I saw a lot of comments on here from many of you. If you ever feel like you need someone to pep talk you, feel free to reach out. Happy to offer myself as a resource. You can always reach out. Here's the contact information. And if you need encouragement or any kind of someone to bounce things off of, we're all part of this network, NCORE community and the First Gen Network. And I'm happy to offer myself as a resource to work through this with you all. But if we can hear from 1 or 2 folks what they want to do or something that they're committing to doing in their next week. Feel free to use that raise hand feature or post it in the chat as well. I see Jenna as a member of the ISU First Gen Task Force. I would plan fun and interactive events during academic year and First Gen week to engage students and raise awareness of resources for first generation students. We meet weekly. Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Jenna, for providing that space. I see Monica is going to commit to not only supporting her first gen students, but her first gen professionals. And she'll do that by reaching out to coworkers on this call. I love that. Thank you for the love, James. And I love that, David. Yes, if taking that risk, right? If someone invites you to participate in something, whether or not you feel qualified, go for it. There is a reason that you're asked. I love that. Affirmations. I belong and I can learn. Yes, you utilize affirmations. Awesome stuff here. Thank you all. Keep it coming. We'll be on here for a bit. And yes, Jorge, apply to a position I feel I would be a great fit, but I'm intimidated and have procrastinated. Yes, actually, a lot of times that fear and the imposter feelings do manifest themselves in the form of procrastination because we're afraid that we're going to fail. Or how many times have you gone for something but didn't tell anyone that you're doing it because you're afraid that you're not going to get in or you're not going to get accepted? And so you'd rather not talk about the failure later. And so you don't want to get anybody else excited, right? So take that risk and apply for those positions. Don't procrastinate, and find someone, one person, whether it's somebody on this call or somebody else in your life, who is going to pep talk you when you have those feelings. So I love that. And yes, feel free to use any of the resources from today or the tools that we've given you. These are all meant to be shared. Also at the bottom of the website, I'll post it again, but at the bottom, there's actually a bunch of links that you might find helpful, including some books and some leadership boot camps, some courses on salary negotiation, free conferences. So there's both free and paid for tools that are here on the bottom of the website. So feel free to check those out when you have time, because they might be helpful to you. Danielle and Jam, do you have anything else to share before we close out?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for tuning in and being a part of this. It was a really fun time.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for allowing us to your cameras or your webs today. We're honored to share this space with you all, and it really is such a privilege to be able to present this presentation that very much comes from our hearts and our experiences. So thank you again.